I know now that I'll make it out alive.
And imagine that we're all like in touch with each other, like the tribes, supposedly are, and we can communicate across long distances, and all of a sudden that drops out. It would be like being in a womb and being born into the dark, cold world of Brighton, a hospital, but you know what I mean? And just it would be insane. We couldn't really imagine that. It would be like an Armageddon here. But the point is, when that next layer comes back around, in other words, when the telepathy comes back, it'll be like an Armageddon of being born back into the world, and actually be an apocalypse, as if we're going back into a state of wholeness and peace. But the idea is we come from that as an immortal spiritual being, which is actually connected to the everlasting quality. The soul is immortal, the spirit is everlasting and eternal, which means the soul is still an essence that's semi-personal, but not as personal as people think. Meaning they did experiments, you can switch the soul with somebody and you'll feel a different amount of energy and a different vibration, a different character, but you'll think you're you. It's not like you gain the memories of the person. Those are all holographic, related to the brain. But you can tap into different frequencies as a result of it, different capabilities and power levels based upon the lessons learned throughout other non-physical experiences, which are happening simultaneously. But the idea is then there are two methods, because then there's an immortality of the next octave, which is technologically rooted. And so then here we go from this level into immortal technological immortality and spiritual advancement. Those who perform the suffering onto others and give into the pleasure and all that stuff, they're moving through the technologically advanced immortal route. Those who are being suffered against, who experience the suffering and choose the path of self-awareness and discipline, they take the spiritual awareness path. Eventually everything meets up at the higher levels, but that's not the same as saying that the people have the same experience or something like that. I think that was the complete idea that I was trying to explain there, and then that was basically the gist of the situation that I wanted to explain real quick, which is hard for people to understand. But the point is, if you take it as that's just something they tell people, it's an excuse so that they do all these things, these just extreme acts of depravity and destruction and all that, guess what? It is, because that's the point. Because they're trying to induce suffering. But the point is, well, you don't like that. What are you going to do about it? You're going to complain? When? Tomorrow? With who? Somebody else. What are you going to do about it? You have to take responsibility and stand up basically for what's happening. But where the art to that, or the truth in that, the righteousness, is that you can't like march up to their house and bang on their door and like flick them off and throw a firebomb or something. That's crossing the line, and you're becoming the giver of suffering at that point. And therefore, when a person say they went to war with the system or something like that, then they'd be switching sides, and that's what happens. So basically, a polarity switch. And this happens when a person is awakened. If they basically weren't confident, or basically were not keeping their power levels, their self-awareness and the purity basically high enough, it'll potentially drag them back down. And if their power level will be high enough, but their direction, it's just like a magnet in their alignment, like a kind of like a dipole magnet, but in the same sense, it's kind of like two unipolars. It doesn't really equate, because the power level will be intense, but the direction, if it's not like securely aligned, it could flip back around, and now the person is negative, but they're as strong as they would be if they were positive, or slightly less. And then all that energy goes into self-destruction, or acts against another person, acts against nature, acts against their own nature. And that's how this depravity game works, where it'll take people and zap them with this shit, and, excuse my language, and if they are not fully, basically, at peace with everything, then they can basically flip around. And they're doing this and like programming people and controlling them. It's like, this person's going to be this, they're going to play that role, we're going to program this guy that way, this lady's going to do this. Mind slaves. But the point is, we're already a mind slave to our ego. And that's the whole point. That this whole realm is based upon illusion because of the way the brain works, and the fact that the organ system and the brain regions have been put together where it's literally like unipolar magnets put together. where one has to be powered at the same time, or both, not at the same time, but one has to be powered and therefore dominant over the whole system at once, to the point where higher brain or lower brain, one of them is going to be dominant. They're both going to vie for power at the same time in the universe or the environment, which has both aspects all at once. So we're in the middle, like, which way do we go? It's like tug of rope, we're the line in the middle. We think we're one side or the other, we're the line in the middle. It sucks. But it doesn't suck. It's just that you have to choose. That's where the suffering is. It's not that people are beating us up all the time. It's that we're vulnerable in certain ways to these energies of the cosmos because of this inherent imbalance. But that's where the creation, the mini creator school basically idea comes out. As far as the infection and the AI and all that, they did a really good job. They did a really damn good job of effing everything up and making it turn into a big horrendous act. Now, the other part of that is that the people who took on the role of being basically the sufferer, or the bringers of pain and suffering, bring the pain, they devised systems that would force them to do it even when they were like sleeping. When they were like, yeah, we're done killing people today, that would wake up in them and make them do it. And it got out of hand, so now they're even out of hand. They can't even control themselves. So it's like, well, now what's going to happen? But the point is, everything's a balance to the point where that brings about those who can control themselves and others. Whereas they can't control themselves and they control others and want that. The people who navigate beyond that are those basically the dark groups can't control. And those people that they can't control will be able to control themselves through discipline, as well as controlling the dark factions. But it won't be through force. It'll be through magic, which you can't really understand. It's just a way of saying mind, okay? Your mind is magic. Put a bunch of neurons and stuff together and make it, like, blow on it, drool on it or something and make it turn on. It's not going to happen. All right? It's a force that's from outside this universe, which means that if this place is net zero, then something beyond creation had to step down into creation to create it, which is a paradox of cosmic proportions. But that's the idea. I don't want this to go too long. Not the video, not the universe. But apparently that's a problem where we want it to go. We need to balance out the show, not have it to go to an abrupt end, or not have it just go like this forever. It has to be it's like a symphony. It has to have a crescendo, an ascension, a suspense, all this stuff. And that's where that storyline, that Truman Show, but more so what I was mentioning about the subconscious having like this storyline that adds up. And if you can break down the repeating elements of the story, you can see what's going to come next. And as well, you can alter your role by you can set yourself up. And as well, you can tune into key aspects of the role and of the environment or the scene and setting. And in that sense, guide the story as if you're the script writer, because you can play the role that gives you the power by association of that character, of that script that you seek. And as well, though, the tenets, the principles are, if you do it for selfish reasons, you're giving into the pleasure side, that's lack of self-discipline, and ultimately that leads to suffering, even if it's just for you. But suffering for you ultimately leads to suffering for those around you, because we're all connected. So if you do it for selfless reasons, which is not selfless because it's not for you, it just means it's for the actual you, which is everything in your environment and everyone, or the true one, which is impersonal. Okay, it's not like just your identity, but it's larger than you. If you do it for those reasons, then it builds knowledge, and it builds self-control, and it builds wisdom, but it overcomes the inherent suffering in this reality, which is based upon delusion or confusion, to look at it more simply, because when those two sides are going and we don't know which way to go, it's just confusion. The path, the chasm, okay, the crucifixion, it's a fork in the road. And that's it. That's a fork in the road, and people don't know which way to go. Funny thing is, choose the middle path, and it breaks the game, if you will. But I don't really need to go into that. But that's where one deviates from the dichotomy, and it's like confusing the universe or the system and yourself at the same time. In that sense, you kind of confuse yourself into getting the highest score that you could possibly get, to the point where the scoreboard doesn't even work anymore and the game's over. But that's the point, that when it happens that way, and it's for a selfless, through a selfless path that one got to that equals a game breaker or a finish line, and it's like, it's not cheating, but you could say it's kind of like cheating, and it doesn't distort other people's games or your own or anything like that. It's like a harmonious rendition or completion. If a person does it through mortal biological immortality, advanced technology, and basically cheating, or chemicals, or stealing the power from others, it enables them to do it. But because it's like cheating, it's like it breaks the game, and it causes distortions and disharmony for everyone. Meaning, if everyone did that, the whole universe would crack, and there would be no other side. Wouldn't have any other like side of the ball to continue rolling on. It would turn into a half ball and slide down the street or something. And through the street being hyperspace, where probabilities are used to continue time, that's a quantum collapse, and that's what they did. Too many people joined that side of like, hey, we can do it biological, it's easy, and it broke time because it has to be balanced. Somebody has to join the suffering side and overcome it, and that's what this whole thing is about. The fallen pointing out who's going to be the suffering side, and the original angels, you could say, some of the archangels defending those and ensuring the suffering side will survive and will make it, and you have this whole cosmic drama playing out for thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years.
Oh. There's a warbird, he's up. There's 2 spots. Oh. Oh, fucking hell. Yeah, I think it's actually, it didn't last, I think it's mating season or something. They're a bit aggressive.